alongside that, we obviously have a number of small minor events that come in through applications, and currently through delegated authority for commercial operations, we would approve them, and we've put some examples down. Within at the bottom of this section, we've talked about, we've received the meeting minutes of the meeting that you had yourselves, of how some extra promotion can be done. I've detailed about the events framework, which we've now got in place, which is a public guidance document for organising events for the community. But alongside that, the events team are currently working on an action plan for promotion of the bandstand bookings as per some of the recommendations. So things like working with our communities team on how we can reach some of those community groups. The recent Bay Run at the weekend, we did a big promotion out to all of the runners in their race packs to get the word out, and working with the council team, council comms team as well for some posts, and also going back through a number of years, contacting some of those pre-bookers to try and enhance that programme for this summer. So that's work that's underway at the moment following that meeting.
So just a quick question. So practically speaking, if we know a community, a group that might want to put forward an event, what would be the process for moving that forward?
So if they wanted a direct contact, then the general events inbox, which is monitored by the team continuously. Lauren, to my left, is our events manager, so is fully aware of and has seen the information and is working on the action plan. In terms of the general public, on the council web pages, there's now a very detailed guide to organising events that takes you through it step by step, but the team would be there to support. So in the first instance, it may be just speaking to them through that contact there.
Again, just very practically, when we had our meeting, we contacted a few of these sort of organisations who sort of some of them said that they would be interested. So would we could sort of coordinate that through Lauren, is that right? And then
we've so the ones that we've captured, if you've got any contact details, it'll obviously make it a little bit quicker for us to contact. But yes, either through send them as a board through to myself or Lauren, and we will make contact to those specific ones as well.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Helen. I'm just wondering if, so like where we were speaking last time, and then, what's that? No, just it's really annoying that feedback. So when we were speaking last time, obviously we mentioned about putting on a programme that felt a little bit more coordinated rather than just people coming forward, because obviously some of the people I spoke to said about putting out matting, like making use of the bandstand and then putting out sort of stuff, infrastructure, like light level infrastructure that would be needed to do that. And I'm just wondering if this like answers that question, because if someone comes forward and says, oh yeah, we can use a bandstand and put on a free dance class, yoga class or something like that, but we need like steady ground in front of us. I'm just wondering if there is any more coordination to it, or if it is just people come to us, they say we want to put on like a dance class, they'll say we'll need like matting, and then it's like quite a cost to them, rather than maybe putting on like a sort of a planned summer event over a couple of weeks or whatever to sort of, so that everyone's got access to that space, if that makes sense.
So at the moment, currently, it is a case of us getting the word out as much as we can to then build the programme. If somebody wants to use the space in front of the bandstand, they can do as part of that application process, so we can coordinate that. What we don't have within our budget is to be able to bring in a programme of events, or say, like you say, maybe matting for say 6 weeks that we could then go out and invite people to come to. We're going out as much as we can into the community to say, you know, if there's community groups, whether they're dance or whether they're fitness or music, then they can come, and we will then work with those applications to get as much of a varied programme as we can within it and to mix it up. But we wouldn't be able to, at the moment, there isn't a budget in place for us to be able to say, you know, we would pay for anything or be able to put any infrastructure in place.
Because Chair will correct me otherwise, but I thought we were looking at, not you, but on this side, we're sort of identifying where there was money available, like from grants and from outside organisations to put on like cultural events or something in the garden. So I don't know, because obviously then that makes that side easier. I know that's difficult to say right at this moment because we don't have that money to go out to these organisations, so you can definitely do this. But there is kind of like an element where that's possible as well.
So where there is funding, so for example, for the Arts by the Sea Festival, where we get Arts Council funding, we put a programme on in the bandstand as part of that. The Town of Culture that we're putting in, and expressions of interest, if that was to move forward, the bandstand would have an element of that. So as we identify areas of funding, then yes, we can look at that to do it. However, quite a few of those applications would then need match funding, and they're not always a full grant, but if there is ones, then we do look out for them and the teams are looking for them. But equally, if any of the board members see anything, please pass them on and we can investigate them as well.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry, I'm late, so I missed the beginning of that. But I was in Salisbury on Friday for an electric bus launch, and in the square they had a band associated with the bus launch, but the stage was actually sponsored, and therefore events to be held for free. So somehow, you know, Salisbury, whether it's the city council or the county, had managed to persuade someone to pay for the facility. So whether it's matting or, I mean, obviously we've got the bandstand, so it wouldn't be a stage in that way at that location. But if you're looking for a solution to enable a series of events, it's having a reasonable promise that those events will come forward, because there's no point in having it if it's not going to be used. But that could be perhaps a model that could be looked at.
Can I ask, I'm a trustee of a music competition in Bournemouth, and if we wanted to use the bandstand, what obstacles are in our way?
The bandstand process is quite straightforward in terms of applying to use it. So I would say limited obstacles. The only things that I would say, some of the logisticals. So depending on who it is that's wanting to come in, some of the access, obviously, depending of what they need to bring in. And we do need to be mindful of the residents in the area. So there are some conditions in terms of levels that we ask that are complied with, and we worked with them a fair while ago with environmental health. Equally, we can relook at them if there is anything specific that's holding people back. And then just on response to the sponsorship, we can obviously pull together something that and advertise and look for a sponsor and see if that can bring any additional funding in.
Roughly speaking, I would say, do you know what the charge would be if, say, somebody wanted to hold an event in the bandstand? It just says that a charge will apply.
So in terms, there's for minor events, so events in, just to have the difference, events in the garden, there would be a fee for administration, but for the bandstand to use it, we don't charge to bring people in.
At the £75 fee, is that right?
Yeah, so it's 26 for a community event, but not for the bandstand. That's for a small one, sorry, we do categorise them, so it depends on the application. When an application comes in for a community event, we would categorise it.
One other thing as well, if you go on to the public, the events framework you set up, there's a form on there which is for the bandstand application form. So, that's brilliant. But actually, that's for a different one in Southbourne, I think, isn't it? The bandstand application form.
Fisherman's Walk.
Yeah, was it Pine Walk or the Pine Walk bandstand?
I can double check that, but it would be the same process for both.
Yeah, so they just do like an event, a general event application. I just, it might be nice to have. It would only just need to be the same as the other bandstand one, but to say Bournemouth bandstand, and it would just sort of signpost people to go. Actually, no, I could put on an event in the bandstand. That's what I thought.
Yeah, we can look at the wording and on there and just make it more prominent. I'm sure we'll take that forward.
I mean, it's just really a comment if this comes to pass kind of thing. If we have this kind of stuff, I still think it's just like obviously a minor administrative point, but or logistics, in having a conversation with the Picnic Park Deli, because they put on such a substantial summer program themselves of music. And like I said before, sometimes things will be on in the bandstand. You'll be stood in the gardens, and actually you're just hit with a cacophony of noise which doesn't sort of make sense. You're getting obviously very amplified sound from the top coming down into the gardens, and it sort of creates quite it's quite dissonant. So I just think, like, obviously we don't know, so we can't go to them and say, oh, on these weekends, and I don't know where that sits with them, because I suppose we can't tell them what they can and can't do in that respect, but it feels like there will need to be like conversations there.
We do send them the list of bandstand bookings at the start of the season. The difficulty is obviously things can change. If somebody came in last minute, we would do our best then to communicate it, but they do get the list. But we can again have a chat with them before this season and see if there's a smarter way that we can work with them.
You saw about the bandstand bookings, but on the full minutes, which I don't have in front of me all of a sudden, which is kind of crazy. It sort of showed you had the Bournemouth Bay run, and there doesn't appear to be any other sort of events. But have some people booked the bandstand over the summer, or have they? Was it vacant?
Yeah, we do have bandstand bookings in, so they would come under our small minor events. So in the paper, we've only put any of the large events down, which is generally what we then share at the board meeting. But if you would, we can afterwards distribute a list of what we've got of small events for the bandstand, and if there's, I think I've put an example in here of a duck race. If there's anything small community-wise from there, we do get those in. So I can share a spreadsheet afterwards with you of what we've got, if that's helpful.
I think that would be really helpful, because we've got these contacts, we might be able to help them to fill the gaps, so that there is more for something going along over the summer, and get people to pay their 26 quid. We can get a sponsor for £26. I can just about manage that. Excellent. Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Sorry, Chair. We've got 20 bookings in the bandstand so far for this summer.
Okay. Great to have a copy of those. That'd be great.
Shall I carry on with the next on the art and makers? So there's a recommendation in here following on from the last meeting. We had a long conversation about the art and makers market, and we discussed that we were going to have a meeting with the operator to take forward some of those concerns that had been raised and talk to them about the future. At that meeting, the operator did decide that it was a trial, and they did not want to continue into the 2026 season. So we were in a situation where we have previously gone out to the market to look for an operator. We've then since then had a group of existing artists, a group of 3 of them with one person leading, that's come forward with a proposal to trial operating it for this year. So this would be what I think our ideal was originally, was that the community are running, the artist community are running the market. So it would be on a similar model to what we had before, that the artist would pay a small site hire fee and then manage that, the bookings, and take take the booking management and manage it on a daily basis. So our proposal is that we move forward with that operation for 2026. The alternatives would either be that the market doesn't happen, which I don't think any of us want, or that we manage it in-house. However, it's a significant staffing resource to do that. Where we can support the artist group is the events team. Generally, because of the amount of events going on across the conurbation, they would generally have somebody on call every weekend that would be able to link in with them if needed. So that is in the recommendations of the report to agree that for 2026.
So Lawrence.
I would go along with that. That's always worked very well in the past. And I think returning to that model is ideal. I propose that.
I was just going to say to the board that one of those individuals is one of the ladies who came and spoke to us a couple of meetings back. So
Yeah.
obviously we saw their passion then for the market. So yeah, completely support.
And second?
And second.
Perfect. Are we all agreed? Yeah, brilliant. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Chair. That brings us on to the next item within the report, which is I would like to introduce Martin Whitchurch, who's BCP Council's Strategic Green Space Lead. As discussed at our last board meeting, we thought it would be helpful to provide the board with a short introductory presentation, just a few slides around some key strategies that have been adopted by BCP Council and how they align with the Trust Board's objective and the Council's objective around putting green space priorities at the heart of our thinking. So I'd just like to hand over to Martin, who will run you through.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Kate. And apologies, I've got a bit of a cold, so I'm hoping I'll be all right to get through this. But so yeah, thank you. Yeah, great opportunity to be able to talk you through this. So yeah, just a few slides once they start working. Here we go. In terms of kind of strategic context and kind of where this sits in the wider green space strategies and policies that are kind of out there at the moment. So it's a start off with I'm sure you're aware of this, obviously the responsibility in terms of how we manage the gardens, you know, primarily for recreational enjoyment of the public with the Charity Act and the Charity Commission. And that's kind of obviously the remit of the board and how we sort of the overarching sort of management of the gardens. Across BCP, some of you may be familiar with this, I've sort of talked about this at different meetings and stuff. We've put together a green infrastructure strategic framework, and it could be a bit of a complicated slide. I'm going to focus on the ones I just highlighted with the orange around them there. So this sits under the corporate strategy, which is great in terms of having reference to place and environment, nature, and kind of the benefits of connecting people and nature. Council declared climate and ecological emergency back in 2019, and that's kind of relevant in this as well, as are the local plan policies. And then underneath that, we've got a suite now of strategies and policies that link into, form, and kind of provide context for how we manage all of our green spaces. So that's everything from parks to countryside and amenity spaces and everything in between. So like I say, I'm going to concentrate on those three in the middle today, as those that are probably most relevant for the gardens. The others are, but just given the time we've got, sort of focusing on those. And then underneath that, we've also got mechanisms for delivery, and there's a whole host of stuff on there. I haven't got time to talk you through today, but I was just going to pick out BCP's accreditation as a nature town as well. So I'll come back to that through the slides as well. So to start off, the council adopted a green infrastructure strategy in 2022, and this is quite a high-level document. It sets out kind of principles and a vision around our multifunctional green space, and that is definitely something that the lower gardens are. They serve a huge amount of interest and value and kind of deliver on a range of different functions for people and nature. So the green infrastructure strategy is there to kind of bring all that together and kind of really talks about how all our green spaces sort of link and connect together, and that's green and blue as well. So that's our
beachfront and sort of seafront, as well as all our lakes and rivers as well. And there's sort of priorities and strategic goals in there, and these all apply to the gardens in terms of how they perform and encourage healthy living and well-being. I'm sure you're well aware of the difference the gardens makes in terms of access to green space for people, strengthening resilience to climate change, supporting nature recovery and biodiversity, but also the role they play with economic recovery and prosperity. You've just been talking about all the events and activity in the gardens as well. So there's a wealth of information in that strategy, evidence base, knowledge and detail about the importance of green spaces and green infrastructure for now and for the future, for climate resilience and all those sorts of things. And I'm going to whiz through these in fairly short order as well, so feel free to come back and ask questions towards the end. Linked to that, we then created an urban forest strategy, and this is kind of recognising how across, a lot of these were formed because of our sort of joined up across the 3 towns of BCP and needing to put our data and strategy together. So we're actually a fairly well sort of tree covered place as a whole of BCP, but we know that there's massive disparities across the town as well, in terms of kind of access to trees and the amount of shade and benefit that people derive from having trees in their neighbourhoods as well. And there's a whole load of data and statistics and again, evidence-based in the strategy about the value of all of that. The estimated value of council tree assets is somewhere around £1 billion in the amenity value, carbon and climate mitigation and all those sorts of things. So it's really important, but we know that private canopy cover is declining, principally linked to housing development, but also that we've got some statistics around something called tree equity, and tree equity combines the amount of canopy cover, so the amount of tree coverage, and then links it to multiple deprivation, race, age, surface temperature, and a load of environmental criteria as well. And that gives us a ranking of each ward across BCP, which you've got there on the screen. So those at the bottom are basically the worst off for access to trees and the amount of canopy cover. And then you've got the 3 highest and the 3 lowest pulled out there. And then Bournemouth Central, relevant for the gardens, is in that highest bracket, which is great. That means we've got lots of trees and the gardens, and sort of throughout, play a role in providing that tree canopy cover. But the detail, as ever, is kind of important. And we know that a lot of the tree cover in the gardens is single age, it's very old, and it's all maturing at the same time. So if you wind forward, however long that may take, 30, 50 years maybe, we know that a lot of that existing current tree cover will start to decline and fail at the same age. So it's how we plan for and kind of future-proof that as much as we can. And across the green spaces team, we're looking at those wards at the bottom of that list in terms of where we can prioritise investment, in particular for street trees, as well as on our green spaces. But the urban forest strategy kind of pulls all that together. And then that links into what is now adopted, which is the Dorset Local Nature Recovery Strategy. So we brought this to our cabinet in October. It then got formally approved at the Dorset Council cabinet in December, and it was Dorset Council were the leading authority. We were a supporting authority. And again, it sets priorities for nature recovery. There's a species list, there's a long list of activities of by priority type, how we can hopefully do more for nature in the future. And there's also a Nature Recovery Dorset network that is all about celebrating and supporting individuals, farmers, landowners, communities to help restore, to come together to help restore nature in Dorset. Councillor Hadley sits on a nature recovery delivery group as portfolio holder, and we've recently met as that steering group for the first time. And across BCP, but also across other urban locations in Dorset, we're going to create a community nature forum, and that is very much geared up and aimed at residents or landowners or people or organisations supporting nature recovery to try and enable them to do more. Quite a simple kind of purpose and kind of reference point for that, really. So we're going to think about how we can effectively get that out to reach people across BCP. And again, obviously the gardens has a role in that in terms of a really important nature corridor, but also obviously hugely important for people as well. So it's all about working collaboratively to try and find ways to support nature recovery. There's a whole load of detailed mapping in behind that as well, which is all on the Dorset Council Dorset Explorer website, which is that as a mapping resource is really quite impressive. There is a lot of data on there, and that the nature recovery mapping looks at where locations wherever it should or could be targeted to create the most effective nature recovery for the wider environment, and that sort of specific activities as well. The mapping of that, and also that's on the screen, shows you that is pretty indicative, but it kind of just promotes and supports ideas where we could do more for nature. Whether it's the right thing or not specific to that site then needs looking at and considering. And something I know that we're keen to do for the lower gardens is kind of come back forward with look again at the management plan in terms of specific interventions on the ground in compartments and what we might be able to do where to support nature recovery, as well as that tree canopy longer term view as well. And then moving into kind of more of a delivery angle, I suppose, from those slides I showed you at the start. As I mentioned a minute ago, BCP is accredited as a nature towns. So this is a scheme set up and run by the National Trust and National Lottery Heritage Fund with support from Natural England. So it's a high level scheme urging councils to sort of build on their climate and ecological declarations and existing work and the statutory duties they have to biodiversity. And our accreditation in BCP is owing to the fact of all those strategies and that slide that I showed you, all of those things that we have in place that are working hard for nature, but also seeking investment. So Nature Towns and Cities is a scheme that is basically about helping to bring people and nature together. But the long view is to try and drive private investment into green infrastructure and green benefits. So that might be some of our corporate interests that we have around the city, around our place, or even national funders. We're kind of told that there is large amounts of interest in funding green sort of space improvements, and that is something that we're trying to sort of prepare for and be ready for. So trying to have a range of projects and investments that are ready, so we can then market ourselves to funders and investors who might want to either sponsor a program of investment over a number of years or specific intervention. A good example locally is we know JP Morgan are interested in a range of improvements across Bournemouth. So this type of work is getting us ready so that we're promoting those types of investment and kind of bringing them forward. And obviously lower central gardens and all of our green space, but primarily sort of high value destination spaces like lower central gardens is a really important space to bring forward to those schemes. So it's about having a scale of investment. We want to have people enabled to feel like they can spend 50 quid on a street corner to plant a tree, all the way up to hundreds of thousands of pounds potentially, where people, companies could invest in nature as well. So that's kind of what Nature Towns Cities is trying to do. It's kind of the wrapper around all of our natural environment work and kind of really promoting and highlighting the fantastic natural environment that we've got across BCP, with the lower gardens really crucial and central to that. Thank you. That's the end of the presentation. Welcome any comments or feedback on any of that.
Thank you for that, Lauren.
Thank you. Not wishing to be controversial, how does this sit with the ice rink in the gardens?
It's all in a balance, I suppose. I think it's about there's a part of the green infrastructure side is about economic prosperity and the benefits green infrastructure can bring to the local economy. I think with the ice rink, there's a trade-off and a balance there, isn't there, with size and scale and the impact on the ground.
Well, there's a lot of destruction going on every year, and we have to try and make it good each year. Is that the ethos you're looking for?
I think following Martin's slide, the recommendation in the report is that the board considers forming a subgroup that will develop plans that seek to find that balance really. So what do we want Lower Central Gardens to be, and how do we try and balance benefits to nature and benefits to the economy? How do we use that space going forward? So that's what we would be exploring as part of that subgroup forming. Hopefully once we have co-opted independent members on board as well to support that process.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose the choices are we have the lower gardens as gardens, or we turn it into the Tivoli Gardens. As I've said in the past, it's very difficult to have a part-time garden, part-time fun fair.
I guess that would be the purpose of the board to some extent, would be to try and strike and create that balance. Andy.
Yeah, with respect, the Tivoli Gardens is very, very different and permanent, and I have been there. I think the real challenge for us as a council is that, you know, whilst the focus of this board rightly is on the lower gardens, we need to balance the needs across the whole area. There are a lot of harmful things going on across BCP that we need to balance, and part of the biodiversity net gain efforts and the work of Martin's team is to try and ensure that people get access to leisure, and that isn't necessarily the gardens as I knew it 50 years ago when I was growing up, and how it's being used for leisure now. I think it would be great if we could find a better solution in terms of not having to restore the grass and you know, put up with it through the spring period, but actually it's a part of the, you know, been part of the scene for the last decade. So we need to find a better solution going forwards, which I think is what the team are aiming to try and do.
But one question, I was talking to planning officers, and they were telling me that the street trees that are planted don't count any credits towards BNG at all. That's
That's correct. So BNG is there's a mitigation hierarchy. So the idea with biodiversity net gain is that you mitigate the biodiversity loss on site within the development. If you can't do that, then the next best is to move that investment in nature, if you like, onto a supply site. So currently, there's no means of doing that street tree by street tree near the development, even though it's sort of outside of its own red line. We are looking, there is something called the Green Infrastructure Framework, which is a Natural England tool, which isn't currently planning policy. In the forthcoming local plan, we are hoping that there's a threshold to biodiversity net gain, and we're hoping that below that threshold, so for small applications and small sites, a way to use a Green Infrastructure Framework to enable that type of investment in street trees. But that's not currently in planning policy. So we try and do that through Section 106 agreement. So try and secure some funding to do it elsewhere, but it's not a straightforward process at the moment.
So in terms of the timing of all of that, I guess, do you plant the trees now and then get a BNG gain of 10% maybe, but doesn't count, or do you wait until it does? I guess.
BNG is very black and white in terms of you have to do it at the time of the application. So you can't start saying we can't start the street trees we plant if we were planting, say, next winter. They have to be linked to a development. So you can't do that in advance. But obviously there is a benefit to us doing that anyway. Where we can, we're trying to find funding to be able to plant street trees. But that's it's not currently within our BNG ability, shall we say.
Just a question really about street trees. I noticed West Southbourne was way down your list, and so doesn't have a lot of trees, and it's mostly got to do with developers removing them. And we have some very keen residents in my ward, East Southbourne and Tuckton, who would like to plant street trees, and they're being held back, and they would pay for them and look after them, etc. How far away are we from being able to allow them to do
that? We're hopeful that through this summer we'll get up to speed with building a means and ways of doing that. We've got a long list of people who've come to us and said we'll pay for and we would like a street tree. And we're working. It's an administrative thing. It's a resource thing in terms of how we set that up and manage that. prioritising where it's kind of fairly easy for people to do that in a grass verge or where there's an existing tree pit. So I'm hopeful, but there's no guarantees, but I'm hopeful that we will get something set up. But yeah, we're trying to put that together, and it's my team, the planning tree team, as well as grounds maintenance. All need there's quite a lot of moving parts to be able to do that. So yeah, we're trying to get that organised.
And we have areas where, green areas along the road where people park. And at the moment, BCP put some big rocks up there to stop people parking. Is that, a space that we could use for tree planting in the future? And then we would we'd get rid of the issue of the grass being cut up and get some new trees.
Yeah, I would hope so. I mean, talk to us, send us a map, send us a photo. I'm sure between my team parks, we can have a look at them, and it's also about what's underneath the ground, how many services and utilities, and all that sort of stuff. But yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Just to reassure you, it's something I'm very keen to see, and Martin's team are working very closely. And as he's highlighted, there's quite a few other departments. We are working particularly on those 3 wards that were highlighted as being at the very bottom in terms of priorities for them. But I'm really keen that we have a mechanism that is useful wherever people are, because I know there are in your ward and also in for instance, Councillor Bartlett's ward. There's a whole lot of street trees that have gone over time. My worry about removing bollards and removing great lumps of rock and replacing the trees is people just drive over them. And even when they're mature, they'll drive right up to them and damage them. So I think there is a challenge about how we constrain the enthusiasm of people to park on any possible piece of space that they shouldn't be on.
We'll plant the trees in the gaps and then remove the rocks later. So, okay, I think the motion is whether we form a subgroup or yes, go on.
I probably should have asked this at the time of the when we were discussing about the co-opted members, but what is the timeline of all this? Because it's just sort of been mentioned, we won't do the subgroup until we've got the co-opted members. And then just thinking about the timescales and our next meetings being like September, we're potentially talking about all this coming together after the next election even. And like within the terms of this, within the terms of the, I know this is about urban forest strategy and nature recovery, but there was kind of like a broader kind of remit we set out last time about bringing in other aspects of the gardens, about maybe lighting issues or more lighting and things about safety to fit in with that. So will that be for the working group as well to sort of set out those boundaries of?
Yeah, I think the working group can set the scope of the working group. We can start earlier, so if we want to go ahead. I mean, I will move ahead promptly now with advertising the vacancies for the board. So depending on interest with that, we could have people join the board fairly swiftly, subject to obviously cabinet and other decision-making bodies. But I don't think there's anything to hold you back, as such. But it would just be useful to have as many people as possible potentially on the board to get wider thoughts.
So if we set up a subgroup today, which just put us 4 on it, and then obviously we filled up this group, we filled up the board obviously at a later date because that process got to start, but because of the importance maybe of this work, we said that begins today with us as a subgroup potentially. Do you have an issue with that?
No, I don't believe so. We can start the ball rolling for sure.
I second that.
Just specifically about the gardens. So there's been no tree planting for how long in the gardens, would you say?
There's been no tree planting in lower gardens, but there has in other bits of the gardens. We get a lot of donated trees, etc. But they're usually up at Koi Pond or in upper gardens. Lower, the trees that are going to be planted are next planting season, which will be the ones the ice rink are paying for. So we'll have 7 trees going in, which are 6 plus a new cherry.
Yeah, because just in just going back a bit, in October 24, I received an email as the ward councillor saying about the removal of a tree due to root fungus rot. And then a ward resident of mine put in the Freedom for Information request about the number of trees removed. But what was interesting at the time is that was said, oh, the tree is dead with no chance of it return to health. We intend to replace this tree when tree planting programs recommence. And obviously the next question was, well, when will that be? And obviously, well, so that is all, that kind of whole tree planting program now is all just tied into with what we've just heard from Martin, basically.
Yes, it's developing plans for the right trees in the right places that can bring forward that replacement programme. And yeah, any other trees that have been lost in the gardens have been lost to either storm damage or they are diseased and need to be removed.
Very, very quickly on that, in terms of the trees which are being planted, I mean, because I know it's Wimborne trees, aren't they? The charity that the black poplars and whatnot. But I was told that they were better at that end of the gardens anyway because of the wind, and you have to have this is I'm not very tree-ish, but you have to have a boy tree and a girl tree. And the boy tree has to be upwind and things like that. But that, you can correct me now if you like, but that was better at that end of the gardens anyway. Is that right?
What's happened is usually, back to your question quickly, the tree planting budget was cut, hence why there's been no tree planting up to this point. But you're correct, yeah. So what we would do is if someone comes to us and says, oh, we'd like to do this, or if we hear about a scheme, we'd contact them and say, first thing we do then is speak to the arboricultural team and say, look, we've got these, we're thinking about these areas, so the gardeners will have a chat and they will come back and go, yeah, that's a good location, that's so and so. So when we were talking about lower, we looked at where trees had been lost, and that map I think I sent round to all of you originally was drawn up with the ARB team, and it was locations where we'd lost trees previously. And so they are going, and the species, again, that was a discussion with them to make sure they're going to be in areas where they're going to thrive, because there's no point. Years ago, I think when I first got here, we were desperately trying to squeeze trees into flooded areas of the gardens where then all of a sudden a brainwave and someone went, why don't we put a swamp cypress in there? That's going to do really well in that wet area. And so, yeah, you work with it rather than against it, and you get longevity out of the trees.
So are we moving on to the next item? Is everyone? So yes.
Just come in and clarify something Chris just said. Just for clarification, the tree planting budget wasn't cut as such. But our tree budget has had to be prioritised on safety works for tree maintenance, which has limited our ability to spend on tree planting. Just so the board's clear. Thank you.
Moving on to next steps and future meeting dates. Are there any
Grounds maintenance?
grounds maintenance?
Well, not recommendations. I just obviously just the director's update. You haven't had that, have you? Or was that just part of the last?
I think the council director's updates was part of the. Have we got a separate report?
Yeah, it's just one other item within the report was around just a operational grounds maintenance activity update. So Chris's team, and Chris, do you want to take this one in a second? They have completed the annual works programme, which is business as usual activities within the gardens. And then in relation to the ice rink, the team have been working with the event organisers on the reinstatement programme post-event. So if there are any questions on that matter, Chris is best placed to answer.
How is the ground repairing at the moment?
It's doing all right actually at the moment. If you go down and look, you'll see quite a bit of seed come through, quite a bit of the grass regenerating. Last year was the first year with the decompaction, which was the compressed air. It's really paid off. It's opened up the soil structure. a lot of the grasses that we sowed last year, again, it was a different 3-way rye mix. That's really come through as well. And it's looking a lot better at this stage than it was last year. Again, the weather's helped tremendously as well. We're now going in to fertilise, and then there'll be a little bit of hand seeding for areas that haven't taken. But pretty much we're ahead of where we were last year. And the prediction is, if we carry on doing the decompaction route, the actual recovery will be better year on year each time, and potentially. But again, we do have to wait and see what the weather does. If the weather is really bad as they take the ice rink down, then it can really wreck the area. We were fortunate the last couple of years.
Congratulations.
On to the next steps and the works programs. So, are there any thoughts from the board in terms of next steps? Yes, Jim.
I think our next meeting is currently scheduled for September. Is that right?
Yeah.
Or are we bringing that back to May? I'm just mindful with the application, with that process and everything. I mean, I don't know if we need to have meetings for that, but there will need to be a meeting before it went to Cabinet and Council, wouldn't it? So.
Yeah, so our current next meeting is the 25th of January, because obviously this meeting was the meeting brought forward from May. But I know that there was a discussion about an additional meeting maybe going in September, so we can organise that if that's what the board would prefer, if there's an update to give by then, or...
So by September, obviously, Saventa would have they've already put in their application for planning, haven't they? So that would have just happened. What would happen in September?
Well, no, that was my fault. I thought there was a meeting scheduled already in September.
Okay.
So I was just saying, does that need to come back? But obviously, even if it's January, it needs to come back at some point, because once we've done the application process for the co-opted members, then there'll have to be a discussion here for the recommendations to Cabinet and then to Council. And then I just didn't know if the board wanted to, if there was any more discussion to be had on the events programme, or is that like, that's finished now and it's just sort of out there and things like that, basically.
I can work with Democratic Services, but potentially maybe a meeting in June, which will give time for applications to come forward and for them to be reviewed as an additional
The cut-off date on the application?
Not yet. That depends on when I get it to go live. But yeah, we can work a date back from that. Even if it's just a shorter meeting, so that we can cover off that point and then move forward with the subgroup commencing.
yeah, I can work with officers and we can get something in the diary, and I'll contact you all.
June, maybe.
Oh, yeah, maybe.
So are there any items that people would like to have considered at the next meeting?
I would just like an update on all the items that that were brought up about the lighting and security and cleanliness and graffiti, and you know, maybe a little bit more information on them. For, you know, because it's quite important, isn't it? Especially for the summer, in preparation for the summer.
We can bring a report back. The lighting issue was covered off at the last meeting, and that all the lights that have been repaired, have been identified, have been repaired. It's an ongoing process. They fail at different points, but have been repaired. The signage around the cycling has also been reinstated. If you walk into the gardens, you'll see that that's been freshly reapplied. I'm not aware of any other specific questions, but if there are any, please let us know and we can do a feedback. There is a Cabinet report coming this week regarding replacement litter bin strategy policy for BCP, which would then be applied within the gardens as well from a cleanliness point of view.
Was it, I think Councillor Armstrong mentioned safety kits. Is that something that we do in any part of BCP, like emergency kits? I haven't seen them myself, but I know she mentioned something. But okay.
Defibrillators, we do
No,
have in
I
certain hubs, but
don't know
no.
particularly what she
I
meant.
can take it
but
back with Councillor Armstrong if you like,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
bring if there is something, we can bring it back to the
Yeah.
board. Yeah.
Thanks.
So just go back to the meeting in June. Have we got anything that? Did you mention the events? You wanted to look at the events? You said have a meeting in June to look what's happening with events.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'd just be useful. Like, obviously, if we carry on doing what we're doing, forwarding names to Helen and her team, and Lauren, and even looking for sponsorship opportunities, as Councillor Hadley said. So maybe it'd be a good time just to see where that actually sits then, in terms of as well the use of the bandstand, even if it's not like special, even if we don't have this more formal program, might just be good to see how that's picked up with doing this work. So yeah.
So possibly looking at the getting events into the gardens. Is there anything else? So the otherwise everything's going through to January, and then it's the obviously the accounts, and that's the where we'll be looking at from there. And we've got the subcommittee that's looking at the council strategy towards building sustainability. Is that something that people would want on the programme? It seems we are the subcommittee, but we'll be by then anyway.
Yeah.
Is that something? Is that something? Do you think it would be useful, Martin, or not to have an update on that? It was only June, so nothing will.
I think June will be too early.
Yeah.
I think September potentially we can provide the start of that, but that would depend on how the subgroup is working that one through.
If I suggest, because we just sort of decided that it'd be June, and we thought, and some of us thought either we're going to go 6 months or 9 months until the next meeting, that perhaps we can just get items submitted from us within the next couple of weeks, and then build, because obviously we are going to have a couple of items on there, and then we can maybe submit things, rather than completely come up with it now.
Okay, is that? And then probably we don't need anything till January because we know what's happening in November and December, provided they get.
Yeah.
Okay, is that all right, folks? Yeah. Well, thank you very much for all the reports. Very useful, good insight into what's going on there and all the hard work that's been done. And it leaves me just to close the meeting. Okay.